Hello chess friends and welcome to Kh2 Chess channel and welcome to the amazing tournament that's going on now these days. Welcome to the Fischerandom or Chess 960 tournament that's going on now in top engine level. So this is now a brutal tournament. The engines have to play really some random setups, random positions, and so far in the tournament Stockfish has a comfortable 3-point lead in front of this other engine Dragon. So the Dragon engine is on the second place and the Lila C0 is only on the third place. So we're following now a great game played by Stockfish against another top engine Allie+Stein in Fischerandom Chess. This is now the setup that the engines had to play. I really like the setup in the beginning because whenever I play the Fischerandom Chess, I always first of all what I think about is where should I secure my king. So I like this position because the knights are very centralized. At least you can bring your knight towards the center immediately. Knight to g3, knight to e3 are opportunities here for white, and then castling immediately is a possibility. Maybe we should play first e4, then knight to e3, knight to g3, because the knight on g3 would also protect the pawn on e4. What I always like about Fischerandom positions is when I get maybe a long diagonal, and that's what I like also about this position. You see the bishop on a1 is also a perfect piece. Now we can develop it immediately with b3 or even with b4 because the rook is on b1, so we can even support our pawn on the b file with b4. I think it wouldn't be such a weakness because it would be supported by the rook on b1. So that's why I liked this prearranged setup. At least we can create immediately dynamic positions. So that's why I sorted this game out, and I wanted to show you how Stockfish handled now this Fischerandom position. So let's check out now the game. Here Stockfish immediately plays the move b4. So it's already a wild move because advancing the pawn immediately, creating already sort of a flank attack on the queen side is really a great strategical idea. So here Allie+Stein does the same. So Allie+Stein plays the move b5, and I wanted to point you out there were no pre-arranged moves. From move 1 the engines have to calculate the position for themselves, so these are already the moves that the engines have chosen here. So after move b5 we have knight to g3, we have knight to g6, and now e4, we have knight to e6, and now knight to e3. As I said, the knights are centralized, the knights are in front of the king, and the knights are basically the best minor pieces to have in front of the king. They are good defensive pieces, but they are also controlling now the center of the board. So now what Stockfish is trying to do is simply securing the king by castling, and Stockfish has so far then a decent setup. Then it's simply maybe time to play something like d3 or d4, and still this light square bishop can be even developed maybe here to g4 or maybe even to e2. So the light square bishop is maybe not the optimal piece on the board, but at least it can be also developed somewhere in the continuation of the game. So that's the setup that we're searching basically when we play chess, Fischerandom chess. We want to get at least some kind of an activity with our minor pieces. These are not optimal positions, but at least the pieces are somewhere on the board. So here after move knight to e3 we have castling also by Stockfish, and now knight to f4. So you see Allie+Stein is using now this very important square on the board to activate the knights. Here we have knight to f5, so Stockfish does the same, and now f6 immediately with preparations to play maybe e5, and then as a long-term plan maybe to break the position with the move d5. So here in the continuation we have now h4 immediately by Stockfish. Stockfish creates already a dynamic position. Stockfish doesn't care here for king security, plays really already a wild move. So here we have e6, kicking away the knight, and now h5. Counter-attack here by Stockfish. We have now pretty much forced line. We have e takes f5, and now h takes g6. The problem is now that you cannot take with the h pawn. That's the main issue, because then you get d3. d3 would be very risky because it comes with a direct attack against the knight, and you cannot actually protect your knight. Then you lose the pawn here on f5. The knight will be then a great piece here in the center of the board. So that's why knight takes g6 here by Allie+Stein, and we have now e takes f5. The knight has to move. Knight to h4. We have now d3, and now here d6 played by Allie+Stein. Now king to h2. The king to h2 is now a very tricky move, because the problem is now you cannot play bishop to g2 because you get then rook to g1, and even if you try something like bishop to d5 to escape from this attack, the problem is now you get this one, queen to f4, and your knight is trapped. You can maybe play knight to g2, but we can immediately take. So even some other possibilities are there. Queen to g4, you get simply too much pressure here on the g file. So taking out the pawn here on g2 is simply not an option. You lose simply simply one minor piece, or you lose simply the battle on the g file. So that's why I've removed king to h2. We have now knight to f5. So Stockfish lost the pawn, but Stockfish has now a really wild idea in mind, because with the move king to h2, Stockfish has announced also that the h file could be opened here, and the problem is already that the pawn structure is a little bit weakened here for black. With the move f6, there are some light square problems, and there are even some long dark square problems here on this long diagonal, because as we said in the beginning, the bishop on a1 is really a monster piece. It's aiming towards the king, so now Stockfish is trying simply to open files, open diagonals towards black's king. So here I've removed knight to f5. Stockfish uses now this moment in order to pin the knight. We have now queen to b7. Allie+Stein is creating this very annoying counterattack, this checkmate threat on g2. We have now f3, knight to h6. Although here my Stockfish engine first suggested this move, knight to g3, taking out the knight, but then it leads now into again a complicated game for black. After bishop to e6, we have now the opportunity to play first this check. After king to h8, now we can take, and now if you try f5, you see, if you try maybe to lock somehow the light for bishop, the problem is now you get queen to h6 and the game is over. So you see this long diagonal, the dark square diagonal is something that bothers, I think, black through the whole game. Even if you try something else, so rook to e8 is another opportunity here, maybe to attack the bishop, but again with rook to e1 after something like c5, queen to f4, and all of the pieces of whites I think are now active. We can even try something like rook to e2, then rook to h1, simply getting our other rook on the h file, and I think black would be in serious tactical problems. So as I said, these are tiny little things that you have to notice, I think, in this tactical plays, in this open games, because piece activity is here the most important thing. You should not really count pawns now, although Stockfish is down one pawn, but in this position you see the pieces are much better of white here. So as I said, here after move f3, here in the continuation we have knight to h6. So here Allie+Stein tried to stay with the pieces on the board, at least what Allie+Stein is hoping for, to get maybe the knight as a good defensive piece here on f7. So here bishop to e6, we have king to h8, and now queen to f4 anyway. So you see Stockfish is getting closer and closer to black's king. All of the pieces are starting to be really cohesive. They're starting really to be glued together and starting to really create a nice attacking formation here for white. So here after move queen to f4, we have c5 by Allie+Stein. Allie+Stein is trying to open the position somehow, is trying to get at least maybe this bishop somehow into the game with d5, then bishop to c7. In the continuation we have rook to e1, we have c takes b4. Stockfish doesn't care here for the pawn. As we said, Stockfish is caring here simply for some piece activity. So we have now queen to h4. Here we have queen to c7. I've calculated also this line, if you try something like bishop to b6, maybe to, I don't know, develop finally the dark square bishop, then you get simply knight to f5. And knight to f5 is a deflection idea, because we want to simply get rid of this key defender in front of black's king, which is of course the knight on h6. Now in the potential continuation, knight takes f5, bishop to f5, but now you see this is already a dangerous position. You have to play even something like h6, and now with rook to e6 there are really some wild tactical ideas with rook takes f6, bishop to f6. Let's see possible continuations. If you play really the worst move, if you play something like rook to d8, of course the engines wouldn't play such a move, but I wanted to show you the basic tactical ideas, because you get simply something like this. You get simply rook to bishop to f6, rook takes f6, and now with queen to h6 you see even bishop to e6. Here's the opportunity, so you get simply too much pressure here against black's king. So that's something that we should always notice. I simply like really always these opportunities of white to create some tactical shots around the square f6. These are the main tactical ideas. So here after move queen to h4, in the continuation we have queen to c7 by Allie+Stein. Allie+Stein is now trying to attack here also this c2 pawn, maybe getting the queen on the second rank. So Stockfish doesn't care. Stockfish plays simply with the same plan, getting rid of the key defender in front of black's king, which is of course the knight. We have now knight takes f5, we have bishop takes f5, and now h6, because here after move g4, which was really now a wild move by Stockfish. Stockfish gave up here the pawn, but Allie+Stein didn't take, because Allie+Stein realized that it doesn't bring anything if you play this check, because you get simply here king to g3. King to g3 would be really wild move. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show really these brutal calculations by Stockfish. After king to g3, the problem is now you can maybe try d5 in order to open some files, open some diagonals in front of the king, but now with f4 everything is pretty much glued together. And even if you try maybe to open this other bishop, then rook to f2, you have to move the queen, and then with queen to h5 there's no good counterplay anymore. Black is simply tactically lost. So you don't have time. That's the main issue. You don't have time to take just one pawn, because Stockfish will escape and will kick away simply the queen, and then will sneak in with the queen. So these are tactical ideas that Stockfish has prepared here. So g4, really wild move. I'm not sure how many of us even would consider this move, to give up just one pawn, and it comes with a direct tempo against the king. So really wild stuff by the fish. So here b3 played by Allie+Stein. Not sure why this move has been played. We have a takes b3. Stockfish accepts the challenge. We have now b4. Here Allie+Stein is trying desperately probably to develop somehow the rook, maybe here towards the 5th rank. We have now queen to h5, bishop to d5. Here Allie+Stein has to protect now the light squares, because after queen to g6 at least Allie+Stein could play here maybe the move bishop to g8 and protect the weak h7 square. So here in the continuation we have now again a brilliant and a monster move here by Stockfish. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best continuation here for white. It's a brilliant move again by Stockfish. Take your time. It's a great idea here. Okay, so here Stockfish played a brilliant g5. Although this square is very well protected by the pawns, but actually there's only one pawn that can take the pawn on g5, which is of course the f pawn. But now after f takes g5 you get queen to h6. You have to play here king to g8, then you get check, and then you get checkmated on g7. So it's a really brilliant move. After move g5, this is now the splitting move. This is now the move that opens the position in front of black's king. Here we have bishop to f7, we have queen to h3, queen to c2. Now comes the check, king to h1. Again, this check doesn't bring anything. There's no good continuation of the attack here for black. Black had some fun with one check, but nothing else in the continuation. So here we have queen to d2 by Allie+Stein. Now we have g takes f6, we have g takes f6, and now rook to g1. The main goal now is here for white to play bishop to d4, bishop to e3, and then to take out finally the square, the pawn here on h6. So the position is basically lost here for black, because black cannot cover here this h6 with the move queen to g5. This square is taken. So as I said, there's only one piece that's protecting black's king, which is the queen, and it's of course not good in such an open position. The queen could be endangered by this rook activity. So we have here h5. We have now pardon me, sorry. We have here now bishop to d4. Now comes this idea with bishop to e3. Here we have rook to g8, rook takes g8. We have king to g8, and now this rook comes into the game. The problem, I think, through the whole game here for black was that this bishop hasn't played in the game. The bishop was simply blocked out by its own pawns through the whole game. So we have now king to f8, queen to g3, bishop to e7, and now bishop to f6. A brilliant move again by Stockfish, because if you take bishop to f6, then you get simply queen to d6. You can maybe cover with the bishop, but then you get some checks, and then you get also this nice tactical motif, and it would be simply game over. So here after move bishop to f6, we have queen to e2. We have now bishop to d5, bishop to e4, protecting of course both of these pawns. We have rook to c8, and now comes this check, takes, and now after bishop to d5, we have again this pinning idea. In the continuation, rook to f8, now a check, and a couple more checks. Here the queen gets behind, and now this pawn is taken, and it was pretty much forced. Now it's even a forced checkmate in 10 moves. So bishop to e6, takes, and here after a couple of checks, here the king has to go towards the king side. We have a new check, and here after queen to g7, it was a checkmate. So Brilliant game by Stockfish. I really liked, first of all, in the beginning, the setup in the Fischerandom chess. Then Stockfish found really this early flank attack with h4, h5, activating the bishop pair was really a wild idea. Although the material was equal, but you see that the activity that you gain is much more important than maybe one pawn in these types of positions. Stockfish activated the pieces really on the best squares, tried to find new attacking opportunities by placing here the pieces really on the best squares on the board. Then when it was time, Stockfish opened the position in front of Black's king. Black never found ways to activate its pieces back, and it was a brilliant here game by the Fish. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game in the Fischerandom chess. It was a little bit different than the games that we have analyzed so far, but I really like the fact that the engines have to also play in these types of ideas. I will maybe even start one tournament. Maybe we can play some tournaments in Fischerandom chess, because it's, I think, a brilliant chess variant, because sometimes we get bored a little bit by normal chess when the players have to play, I don't know, Rui Lopez, and then we have seen the positions millions and millions of times. These are now new positions, and it's really hard to calculate them, but of course Stockfish sees deep tactical ideas in an early stage of the game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game like I did. If you want to see more brilliant and tactical and positional games like this, check out my commented chess games played by computer. Here's the link of our whole playlist. And if you like to see maybe humans battling it out in their best chess games, check out my commented chess games played by humans, the best chess games of all times. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.